is Joel Thompson, and I'm going to be in conversation with you all and with Deborah Debuton, and we're going to provide a little insight into our creative process. The collaboration that is at the forefront of our minds, although there are many that we have in the pipeline, I'm sure, but the one that we are working on right now is a song cycle that's essentially a songbook for Black Houston. In collaboration with the Gregory School and Emancipation Conservancy, we have taken the oral histories of local Houstonians, and Deborah Mouton has turned them into poetry that I am now setting to music. And that's my big project for the rest of the year. To provide you a little insight into our process, we're going to take a look at one of those songs that I have to write this summer. And I'll show you a little bit of how I'm processing it, and we'll process it together. And I would love your insights as we look at that text together. But first, I want to ask Deborah, how are you doing? Are you feeling okay with the thing? Can we?
No, it's me.
Okay.
So for those of you who are like, why are you not just here? I caught the flu earlier this week, so I don't want to give any of my critiques to y'all, nor did I want to try to wrangle my like 100-degree fever, which I had earlier this week. So I'm a little better now, but I'm probably going to go back to bed after this, guys.
Awesome. Well, the poem that we're going to look at is Enlarging, and it's in response to the oral history of Ruby Poindexter. I was wondering if you'd be willing to share any insights with us, and especially me as I'm about to work on it, about how you turned that history into the poem. And Elisa, if you wouldn't mind sharing the text, we have little printouts of the text. It won't go anywhere, don't worry, so that a few members of the audience can see it. And then we'll read it together. But before we do that, I would like for you to share a little bit of that.
Yeah, so, one of the difficulties I think that Joel and I both are facing is, or I would say difficulties and say more opportunities or challenges, is thinking through the fact that we have 12 songs that we're setting, right? It's about a 45-minute block of time that we're trying to think about amplifying multiple voices. And, I mean, you don't want to listen to one person tell their one story for 45 minutes typically, right? So there has to be something else that we do to move the work along, to give you interest and diversity, and to really be able to celebrate that each of us carries a different voice and a different story, and honor that those stories don't sound alike, even though they may all be from the same region. And so I started thinking of,
One second. Can everyone hear her okay?
Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah?
If she spoke slower,
Slower.
it would help. There's a little
Yeah,
bit of
I can be slower.
Okay.
Sorry about that, y'all. I'm from LA, I am Houstonian, but born and bred in La La Land, so I talk a little fast. Yeah, this idea that we want to be able to celebrate kind of the multiplicity of what voice sounds like within the city. And we don't want one thing to just kind of drone on for too long. So I had to think about what were creative approaches I could take to giving Joel form that maybe informs the way that he goes about creating the music. As a spoken word artist, I've been writing persona poems my whole life. And so think about climbing inside of someone's body and being able to write on their behalf. And so then I started thinking about, well, if I am going to create more in the sense of libretti, or more in the sense of these bigger theatrical moments, can I play with multiple voices? To which I stumbled on this one. Ruby's oral history was fairly everyday, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But it does mean that the normal intrigue of latching onto a specific moment or something in history that seems more exciting on the surface didn't necessarily exist within her oral history storytelling. But she did spend a lot of time talking about who her parents wanted her to be, and how she held them in such high regards, and how she's trying to live up to her parents' views of who she would be, when she grew up. And so I started thinking, well then, maybe this, as much as it is about Ruby, doesn't need to be told from Ruby's point of view. But instead we can let her parents talk about who they wanted their child to be when they named her Ruby, when they bore her here in Houston, when they decided to create these here in Houston, and how that can be something that gained texture in not only the storytelling of all of these stories, but also gave Joelle form in a new way to really create something that was monumentous.
One second, Deborah. Just to make sure that people are hearing and understanding what you're saying, I'm just going to paraphrase a little bit of
Yes,
what you
please
just
do.
said. So she was saying that in interacting with the oral history of Ruby Poindexter, she realized that there's not something of super dramatic function that really popped out to her in her oral history, and that's okay, but she wanted to consider how she could play with form to make the story of Ruby Poindexter come alive. And because she talked about her parents quite a bit in her, sort of retelling of her life, she reframed this history into a duet between her parents. So they sort of analyzing or expressing the love that they had for her and the dreams that they had for Ruby before she was even born. Is that an accurate paraphrase? See. I just want to make sure everyone can hear what your brilliance.
Yeah, do that as much as you need to.
Yeah. So right now, I think maybe this is a perfect time for us to look at the text itself. So a few of you have the text, and what I'd like to do, I'd like to invite Elisa. Maybe we can. Is there another microphone at all? We can look at the text together, and if you see the text, she's organized them into 3 columns. I'm assuming Hattie is Ruby Poindexter's mother, and Billy T is the father, and so there's a column for Hattie, a column for Billy, and then a column where they sing together. And so just so you have a little insight into my process, one of the first things I do is memorize what I'm about to set. If you spend any time with performing musicians, you've probably heard a maxim of like the music doesn't really come alive until the violinist memorizes the music. You can play from the music, of course, and that's totally fine, but there's something that happens with expression when it's in your body and you don't have to rely on a piece of paper. And I use that same sort of philosophy when I'm composing. I haven't yet memorized it, so I'm not ready, but we're gonna skip that step. And we're just gonna dive into the text. I'll read Billy and you read Hallie, and then we'll chorally read the both column together. How about
Okay,
that?
yes.
Sweet. So Hattie starts.
There you go.
My Billy, I need to tell you something. Our territory's enlarging. More dirt to till.
My Hattie, enlarging, another seed.
Glory
be.
Precious as gemstone. Oh,
Our 10th arrival,
precious as gemstone.
humbled by dirt farmers' hands.
Cattle and livestock.
Sisters and brothers, treasure of our eyes. She will learn to live off the land, a child made to outlast the earth.
Salt of the earth. Sweetest taste of the world's mouth.
We'll call her Ruby, glowing and rare, red like the sunrise, gleaming like stars. Your womb will be Abraham's sky, pocked, endless, holding legacy far and wide.
Salt of the earth.
Salt of the earth,
Kind and lovable.
kind and lovable. She will be loved, growing what she eats,
Eating as she grows.
living off together,
Oh,
living off the earth, as we've always done, commandment fulfilled,
Like we always prayed.
fruitful
And
and multiplied, far as the eye can see. And when we're too old to see,
When we've come and gone, she'll find a man with a sturdy name.
she will be lovable,
She will be lovable.
not afraid to soil his hands. He'll till and prune her,
Water and give her light.
make her shine.
Let her shine.
Red and gleaming, Bay City rare,
Precious as gemstone.
salt of the earth, our Ruby, glory be. Bravo, Deborah. So it's a beautiful little duet. I can imagine parents looking at a child later on in the poem, but at the beginning, we see, my Billy, I need to tell you something, our territory's enlarging, more dirt to till. That's a pregnancy announcement to me. So there's, I guess the first thing I would do now is I would sort of try and look at the architecture of the poem and see if I can illuminate that with a musical architecture. And for me, there are three distinct parts, and I'm curious to see how Deborah responds to my sort of architectural imposition. I see the first section up to Glory Be as a distinct section. It's Hattie telling her husband Billy that they're about to have a child, and then there's this Glory Be. And I think when I see Glory Be, I think of the doxology in the Christian tradition, Glory Be to the Father. So there's an implication that faith is really important to this couple as they're embarking on this journey of bringing another life into the world. And then there's the section afterwards where they are talking about their hopes for her, that she will live off the land, that she will be the salt of the earth. And then the centerpiece of that section for me is almost a chorus where she says, "We'll call her Ruby, glowing and rare, red like the sunrise, gleaming like stars." Now, when I see something like that, that screams music, that screams chorus, I want to repeat it. And I think one of my questions to Deborah would be like, could I repeat it somewhere else in the poem? And yeah, what do you think?
Can I just act like chime in there?
Yeah.
I think in working with composers, for me, like we want to give you the fodder to create something really great, but we want to give you also the freedom to listen to that impulse and figure out where repetition takes place, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what separates the art of poetry from the art of being a librettist, is that you are intentionally creating art that leaves room for other art to respond to it, to enhance it, to illuminate it, to be in collaboration with it. And so in the end, the music doesn't exist on its own. Yes, it's fine. And yes, the poetry is beautiful, as we just recently experienced, but the real magic happens when we put these art forms together. And so it's always great to collaborate with artists like Deborah, who intentionally leave room for my artistry. And I try to, in my music, not overshadow her artistry in any way, so that we are really lifting each other up for the sake of what we're creating together. Sometimes you'll interact with artists who are not suited for that sort of arrangement, where it's like, my way or the highway, I don't care about your music. And I'll give an example of how I could potentially destroy this poem as a song. I'll just no, I'm serious. I think it's actually a part of my process. I'll get into it a little bit later. But then the section, for me, there's another line in this poem where I would draw a line in the sand, as I guess, would be right after she says, they sing together, "Fruitful and multiplied, far as the eye can see." I feel an instrumental interlude right there, because what happens right afterwards is when Billy, the father, says, where is it? He says, "And when we're too old to see." And she sings, "When we've come and gone." I think they spent the middle section of the poem dreaming about who Ruby is, what her life will be. But then the poem ends with their hopes for what happens when they are gone. And that's a distinct section to me. She will be lovable. He'll till and prune her, water and give her light. I'm looking at the clever ways in which Deborah creates a sort of, I forget my language arts terms. Is it alliteration or assonance? Maybe both. Where she does prune her, water, give her, make her, let her. There's this repetition there, and it's all about making them shine. Red and gleaming, basically rare. Her name is Ruby, and so you're playing off of the gemstone name and all of that. So there are all these wonderful details that Deborah has embedded into this text that I want to illuminate with my music. One of the things.
I think for me also it was about like I know it's a gear father towards nature and mother towards nurture. So if you look, like, everything for him is very much like, he'll protect her, provide for her, like these things that we think stereotypically fathers want.
Yeah.
And the mom is like, no, he'll water her. Like, he's gonna grow her. Like, he's gonna make her a better person. Like, that's the parts that we should be concerned about. So together, they're addressing the whole of her, you know?
Exactly. There's even a part that I almost perceive as a correction from Hattie to Billy, where Billy says he will make her shine, and then Hattie says, let her shine. There's this sort of like returning autonomy to Ruby herself. She can shine on her own. She doesn't need a man to make her shine. So like these little details I'm going to try and illuminate with how I said it. If I have Billy singing, make her shine, right? And then how I have Maddie respond, or what's her name? Hattie respond, it has to be in a gentle sort of, I want to give insight into the relationship that they have together. So the rhythm, the contour, where it is in the tessitura all implies information about the relationship between these two people. So a lot of work to do. But I think to give you a little insight into what I would do in this text, I'm just going to focus on the first 7 lines. Hattie sings, my Billy, I need to tell you something. Our territory's enlarging, more dirt to till. Billy says, my Hattie, enlarging, another seed, question marks, and then together they sing glory be. So I think the first thing I do is try and imagine the situation around these words. Just go with me for a moment. It's gonna be like talking with a mad person, but I imagine Billy sitting in the den or whatever, reading the newspaper. Hattie just came home with some information. Hattie says, Billy, and he's still reading the paper. And then she says, Billy again, Billy. And then she says, my Billy. And then he's like, oh, okay, my Hattie. And then she says, I need to tell you something. Our territory is enlarging. Then he responds, enlarging? More dirt to till, and rubs her belly. And then he says, another seed, and then they sing together, glory be. Now that's just one way those lines can go. If you look at how they're set out on the page, if you have a copy of the music there, or the words there, Hattie says, my Billy, I need to tell you something, our territory is enlarging, more dirt to till. Then Billy responds. Another composer can set it that way, where one sings and another sings, but my instinct, and I think Deborah is really encouraging me to do this too, is only so much you can do when you're formatting on Word, is having them respond to each other like a regular couple, maybe even singing over each other, so that you get a little bit more insight into their relationship. Am I okay so far, Deborah? Is that okay? Sweet. And since Glory Be is this moment, this first moment where they sing together, there's an implied importance to those words already. And the fact that the whole song ends with the words glory be, I want to use the same musical material that she sings glory be the first time to end it. But I want it to feel like an ending when it gets to the ending, and I don't want to give away the ending the first time she says it. So I have a challenge now in my head of how I'm going to set glory be. It's very conversational at first. I'm trying to give insight into their relationship. So I think I'm going to give probably one note to one syllable at the very beginning, but maybe to show the importance of glory be, maybe that will be the first time we get multiple notes on one syllable. We call that a melisma in the business. So we'll have, it'll feel like more dirt to till, another seed, glory be, right? Now, you have to look at also another detail that she has is, what I'm seeing too, is that the name of the mom is Hattie, the name of the dad is Billy, the name of the person whose oral history we are looking at is Ruby, and then there's this glory be. I think she's playing with the words. Glory be, Ruby, Hattie, so I want to emphasize that. So when I'm thinking of musical material that I can start to work with, I just think of 2 notes. Let me see if I can make sound. Sure. Hattie, Maddie, Ruby, Glory be. So I'm going to start with just basic musical material, maybe 2 notes. Now, another thing I have to think about too is not unintentionally accenting unstressed syllables. So if I want to do a melisma on the word glory, I would want to put it on the melisma on the part of the word that we would normally stress. So no one says glory, we say glory. So I would put the melisma on the O. Glory. Now, if I do glory, like that, going up, that might work. But if I want to show that re is an unaccented syllable, maybe I would have glow go up and I'd have re go down so that it feels like glory, glory, glory. That feels more like glory as opposed to glory. But both are viable. You know, I'm trying to think about how I'm playing with the words. If I were Stravinsky, I would accent the wrong syllable. And a part of my process too, he did it intentionally. It's not just because he's Russian. He did it in French and Russian and everything else. He liked to play with language in that way. But one of the parts, yes.
Is that, I think as you saw on the librettist side, I kind of understand, I'm not a composer, and his mind is magic. What I do understand is thinking about singable text, and things like big open vowels, like an O. I know by putting the first thing and sing together, be glory, that he's gonna accent the O, and he's gonna make the O really big, because every singer wants their mouth to look like this, right? So, like that's, so I think, you know, coming to the text as a librettist and not just a poet, it's also thinking about where am I giving him big round vowels? How do I make open letters that feel like a voice can sit in them for longer periods of time? Mm-hmm. Where in other poems, there's some poems that have more text in this, there's some that have less text in this, right? This one probably repeats more than a few of the other ones does, because I really wanted him to be able to play with the texture of the voice more than worrying about every single word being this content-heavy version, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so glad to work with a librettist who thinks about vowels, because that's wonderful. There was one poem I recently set, and I feel, well, I'm not even gonna, I'm not gonna go there. But the climax of the poem happened to be the word tears. Tears of the thinning ozone layer is the line. And the word tears. And I want it to, it's the climax. It's going to be in the upper tessitura of a baritone. And so how do I set this in a way that they can use the E, whatever vowel that is, to navigate through the passaggio and sing tears at a climax at the top of it? It's hard. If the word were water, wah, like that would be no problem. You know, the mouth is open, everything's relaxed, everything's free. But singers intentionally trained to make sure that they had that sense of freedom on all of those vowels in every part of their tessitura. But still, as a composer, we can choose to be kind or not. Yeah, so I was gonna mention that one of the parts of my process is to make the worst version of the text as possible. Jacob Collier recently went viral. He's another artist who works in pop, jazz, a cappella realms, and amazing artist, a huge fan. And he went viral saying like he likes to make the worst song possible. He's giving advice. Make the worst song possible so that you know that it's still okay. And that's always been a part of my process, where rather than interpreting this as Deborah intended and as, you know, to let you into this at the risk of being potentially disrespectful, I might make a version of this that's more Bertolt Brecht, Kurt Weill, Sondheim or something that Okay, let me just let you in. I would do something like, so the words are, my Billy, I need to tell you something. Our territory's enlarging. I might do, my territory's enlarging sounds like a war thing. Like, our territory's enlarging. So I might be like my Billy, I need to tell you something. Like I need to, like I would do the worst version of it, right? That it's not like a pregnancy announcement. It's our territory is enlarging. You know, like something really ridiculous. And that way, I get that out of my system. I know what I don't want to do, and know that it's still okay. I can still create. And then once I get that out of my system, sometimes I go through the whole text that way. And one of the ways you can make something intentionally bad is lose sight of the overall architecture. So if you focus on each emotion minutely as it comes along, maybe there's a little bit of anxiety and trepidation as she's saying, we have a child. So if I focus on the anxiety all the way up until it's glory be, and then switch to glory be, and then switch to, oh, we're tilling the soil in the land, whatever, and then switch, you get this very disjunct, incoherent jumble of noise that doesn't really make any dramatic sense. So sometimes I do that, go all the way through the text and try and make the worst song possible. And sometimes you find in that there's this interesting kernel that you found. Oh, switching from this mood to this mood feels like that. I can actually use that, maybe not even in this piece, but in another setting. And you write that down, and you're like, oh, if I go from this chord or this texture to this texture, it feels like this. And you end up gaining other tools for your toolbox by doing the intentionally wrong thing. So just putting that out there for the artists in the room as well.
Dylan, the question for you?
Yes.
Your process seems super long, and that's no judgment. But I think that like artists spend a lot of time in our minds before we actually get to the creative part. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about that, like balance for you? Is like how much time is spent in your head versus how much time is actually put towards the creating of the piece?
Well, I think for me, at this point, I would have it memorized. So a lot of it would already be in my body. I try to get it not just in my head, but kinesthetically. So I'm choosing to be professional right now. But an essential part of this process is walking around my apartment, saying the memorized text over and over again, in my falsetto pretending to be Hattie, in my bass register pretending to be Billy. I'm not going to subject you to that. No, for my own, yeah, I'm just gonna keep. But it might seem like it's in my head because I'm describing it all right now, but a lot of it, I feel it in my body. Because in the end, I want the performer to feel it in their body. I want the audience to feel it as they receive that energy in their body as well. So I try to make it as holistic as possible, but the actual creative, like the playing, the putting it down, I can give you a little insight into that right now. Maybe because the mood of the whole piece itself, I would say, is very loving, nurturing, kind. I would come up with textures on the piano that would sound like that. So I'm just going to do that right now. Just take a listen. Let me know which one you respond to best. I'm just going to improvise right now. Okay, we'll see. Yeah. Is this working? This pedal isn't working. Is there another? So as we're getting a new pedal, sorry about that, I would choose a key that I would want to improvise in first. When it comes to the piano, the key sometimes doesn't really matter except for how it lies in the fingers for the pianist. Obviously, tessitura considerations for the vocalist. But when I'm writing for strings or other instruments, sharp keys tend to sound more bright, spring-like, D major, E major, A major, sharps. If you want something warm, rich, especially when you're dealing with brass, you tend towards the flats, B flat, E flat. A lot of black church music is in E flat, shouts and all of that are in E flat. So there's sometimes tonal considerations that you sort of tap into people's subconsciouses by whatever key you choose. And sometimes when you change the key of something that's so beloved in someone's mind, they'll feel like something's off sometimes. So the key that you choose is something to consider. Let's see. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna try something in B, because for some reason B sounds like earth to me, and there's a lot of like ground. And then I might try something in B flat, because that sounds warm.
I can't hear any music you play, just so you know, Joel.
Oh, okay.
So don't ask me about this later, I love you.
Okay. Wait, let me see if there's something I can do about.
I think it's, if you can, like, it should say like, sound reducer or something like that, or reduce outside sound, it might be on, so it's gonna eliminate.
Original sound?
Yeah, it might be original sound.
Yeah, I have it on original sound. Let's see if it works. Okay. I think I like B major better than B flat, but we'll see. I think a gentle, like lulling texture between 1 and 4 just feels like very homey and, I don't know, pastoral almost. There's so much I'm wanting to evoke here, and I think at this point I might focus on like a little leitmotif or a little ritornello melodic figure that would return later, or maybe eventually be sung. Maybe the actual notes for the word glory be are played at the very beginning, sort of a musical foreshadowing. That's an option. Yeah, and maybe I come up with the actual notes for my Billy, and then have Billy sing my Hattie on the same thing to show that they're connected. And then the I need to tell you something. Do I focus on need or tell or something? Is it I need to tell you something? Is it I need to tell you something? Where does the downbeat of that lie? I need to tell you something. Do you like that one? So it's all, I need to tell you something, something lands in the downbeat? That feels right to you? I don't know. The word enlarging is one of those words that makes me think I don't know English, because you say it long enough, you sort of like enlarging. what, how do I, enlarging. Enlarging needs to be softer?
When enlarging is dominant, that's more warlike.
That's one, yeah. But I also want to,
Special event.
mm-hmm,
And it's also implied that when they say, he says another seed, there are other children. But this child is
yeah, this is their 10th arrival. He says that, right? That, yeah. So this is their 10th child, right? So how do I, so what are some of the things that I should consider, Deborah, maybe? What are some of the things I should consider as Hattie is singing, our territory is enlarging, more dirt to till, and how is that colored by the fact that this is their 10th child? What are the emotions that I should be trying to convey as she is saying, our territory is enlarging? Another scene.
Anybody crazy enough to have 10 children, they really have to like celebrate each one as like an arrival point, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
I cringed a little bit because I was like, whoa, okay. But, you know, I mean,
9 boys.
it's kind of like this, you know, God will multiply you. You know, it's seen as like this blessing of multiplication that there's more of you in this earth. And that the influence you have is important and righteous enough that you can be the steward of more. Right? So I think that is really the thing. It's like for us to have our territory enlarged in this way is like God having favor upon us. Like glory be, like that we gain more favor.
So it should be something that's celebrating, sort of like I have this muse. So I sort of need that beginning to be a sort of on-ramp to the celebration, perhaps.
I would, I'm sorry, I don't know, I can't hear anyone else if someone's talking, so I don't mean to cut anyone off. I think that there's also, specifically in this piece, a very strong tie to farming, to agriculture, to being able to like plant and sow and reap. And so the idea that there's literally more hands to till the dirt, right? Like more hands to
Yeah.
till, right? So there also is an ease being given to you to expand because you now have 2 extra hands to do that work too as well.
Yeah, and I feel like that's probably why I have this pastoral instinct. I have this more sharp key. In a lot of classical music, the sharp keys are associated with greenery and the ground and growth and earth. And so I'm leaning more towards B rather than B flat. And I think for that very reason. And especially that the fact that you use the word dirt and ground. There's this one line, the one line that Hattie sings at the beginning, more dirt to till. There's so many T's in that, and I have to sort of consider the playing with the T's, more dirt to till. Or is it dirt to till? You know, do you hear the difference? Dirt to till, dirt to till, right? So
I think it's the same.
yeah. So it's interesting how just one consonant can imply sort of socioeconomic status, location, everything about in one consonant. So these are the things that we have to consider together. We don't want things to sound as if this is, you know, Bay City rare, this is Houston. We want the consonants to sound as if you're coming from Houston, and you wouldn't sing with now the King's English, I guess. Dirt, you know, that's very different vibe. And
I'll also say for me, I put dirt to tell in the front half because in my mind the first like 7 words are rested. They're not even in the song yet, right? So that doesn't mean that's how you have to set it.
right.
But I was like, let's put all the tricky syllables at the front end, and then once we can actually get into the swell of the song,
Yeah.
there's an ease to everything else.
And that's very clear when we see the piece of the piece of the puzzle that I consider to be a chorus. We'll call her Ruby. I mean, it's like the name of the person whose oral history we're examining through this lens. We'll call her Ruby, glowing and rare, red like the sunrise, gleaming like stars. I love that at the end of that last line, she puts a nice ah vowel that they can sing together. Gleaming like stars. I'll put that probably in a nice resonant part of their register. And I feel like I want Hattie to hold stars while Billy is singing, "Your womb will be like Abraham's sky." Do you feel that? Like, I don't know, like having stars being held almost as a representation of the firmament, and then having Billy come up from, "Your womb will be like Abraham's sky." There's this imagery of the sky and the stars, and these little moments hopefully will make a coherent piece. But right now, I'd like to pause a little bit and ask if you have any questions really about what we've talked about so far. I've barely, just played a little of my improvisation process. I would probably, I don't know, I'd probably make a little Alicia Keys moment and sort of funkify it a little bit rather than be pastoral and see what I would get from that energy. Or, we were just listening to Sarah Vaughan coming in. I would maybe try some more jazz harmonies rather than pastoral and see what sticks with which parts of the text. But yeah, any questions right now so far based on what we've just shared with you? I know it's a lot. We just sort of info dumped. Yes.
So when you were playing through, just improvising,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you were like looking at the words. Some of the lines were clearly melodic, others were harmonic underneath.
Yeah.
Were you like, as you were playing the melodic parts, actually thinking about words as you were doing that, or were you just trying to come up with sounds?
At that point, I was just trying to come up with sounds. I think I tried to come up with. I think a lot of times the melodies can communicate the contour of the speech itself, but they can sometimes be a part of the drama. As I was looking over this, there was one. Like if you have a melody that's reaching and it feels like it reaches a ceiling, and then you come down and the next note is above that ceiling, that there's so much that melody is communicating. And so in the beginning, I'm, just vibing, trying to figure out melodic contour, but I'm also trying to figure out what is the melody of the heart before I'm considering what the melody of the words are. Like, what does that love feel like? Is their love reaching upwards? Like is it something like that, expansive, like ya da da da, or is it falling? There's like a falling in love. Right? Is this like this feather theme from Forrest Gump or whatever, like this, so there's so many, I'm trying to figure out what the melody of the heart is first. And then if that happens to overlap with what I see to be a melodic contour of the words that Deborah has written, then I'll just put it on that, But that's what I was trying to do. What is the melody of the heart of both of them right now? What is a texture that can last throughout the entire song, but can also leave room for the excited anticipation of Hattie as she's telling her husband, and also leave room for him to sort of imagine what the man that Ruby will end up with will be like. It's asking a lot of a few chords, but that you sort of have to start from there. I do a lot more work than I'm revealing right now with the words, and when they're memorized, I'm saying it over and over again in the shower, as I'm cooking, as whatever, just so I can figure out the words have a rhythm on their own. And sometimes if I'm stuck on trying to find a melody, the words will give me a rhythm that will then turn into a melody eventually. But I hope that helps. I don't want to get into the weeds too much. Yes?
Can you speak though to, in addition to as you're building the song, but also as you're building these songs within like the larger framework of the piece?
Yeah.
You talked about the architecture of the poem and matching the architecture of the music to it, and then is there any what is the process of matching the architecture with the entire piece?
Right, yeah, so there is one song in this cycle that I have already set, And it was the first poem that Deborah wrote, and it's in response to Jackie Bostick, whose oral history, that she came here to Emancipation Park and talked to Deborah, and she interviewed her and turned it into a poem. And the key of that piece is D major. I'm going to avoid D major for everything else. Because we have one giant blazing, it's just very apotheosis of D major in that song. So I'm not going to choose D major ever again. And so just to keep the ear fresh as you're listening to a whole 45-minute song cycle, I'm trying to be kind to you all. So you're not hearing just D major the entire time. So that's one thing I would consider as I'm trying to flesh out the whole architecture of the whole thing. And also, I really appreciate what Deborah has done is that there are things that tie all of the poems together. I don't know how you did it, but these are very different histories, but there are some turns of phrase, some sort of rhythmic elements that tie everything together, but they're all very different. They're very different people, very different context. Yes, Houston unites all of them. And then she's turned some of them into duets. There are three duets?
I know there's at least two, there might be.
Two. Yeah, and the two duets are different. In the first one that we just looked at, it's the parents of the person whose history we're sharing. In this other duet, the actual person who's in the oral history is one of the characters. So that's one of the things I have to consider. But yes, I know we're running out of, one more question? Two more questions. Student and then I'll go, yes. Where do I get my inspiration from? From the amazing artists that I love to listen to and study. If you were here as you were coming in, there was a playlist of artists I'm listening to right now. Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, a jazz vocalist. She's probably my favorite artist alive right now. She's amazing. And her partner, Sullivan Fortner, they're fantastic. I wrote a whole symphony that got premiered at the New York Phil in March, based on a line from a Cecile McLaurin-Salvant song. That's how obsessed I am. And Esperanza Spalding, Nina Simone, I wrote my thesis at Yale on Nina Simone. Just a lot of amazing Black women making music that are really the source of my inspiration. And I'm going to be writing an opera for HGO that is about, I can't say yet, but it's going to be Black women centric. And so I'm sort of saturating my ears with the music of Black women in America right now in preparation for that. So that's a lot of where my inspiration comes from. And my parents, really, they were amateur musicians and they met making music. So I think about them all the time. So those are a few of my inspirations. And Dr. Rob?
Because it's so many different songs, do you feel a sense of trying to have some type of melodic or harmonic theme that will kind of intersperse itself throughout to connect the pieces?
Yeah, yes, the thing is, I don't want to be too didactic about it. I don't want to have one theme that shows up in all of the songs, but I think the fact that I'm thinking of it more of a songbook than a song cycle, if that makes sense. Like with my Rita Dove song cycle at Giving Voice, there was a musical element that was present in each of them that connected, but that was just 4. And for 45 minutes, if you started hearing the same thing poking in each song, it might be a little fatiguing. I could do a Rachmaninoff and flip it upside down and backwards and like Rhapsody on a Theme of Paganini, but we'll see. I've only written one song out of the 12. So yeah, you do want things to feel cohesive, but I want to perhaps highlight the efforts of Deborah to make these poems cohesive, because they feel connected when you read them, and I want to just emphasize that connection without being too didactic about it with my music in response to it. Yeah, we'll see at the premiere perhaps.
It's interesting because when you talk about trying to find the heart,
Mhm.
the heart sounds like,
Yeah,
that is what kind of drove me to that question.
yes.
That heart ring through, even though the heart may be different for each song, what of that rings through consistently through?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to honor the people who graciously lent their stories. So I looked up Ruby Poindexter as I was trying to dive into this and learned that she taught and her husband was a doctor and her children are still in this community and what she did in this community and all of that. So like I want to sort of as much as possible, I'll talk to Deborah about the energy that she felt from listening to these stories. These people tell their own stories. Is this person an introvert or an extrovert? I might listen to, she might say that Ruby Poindexter is the most introverted person in the world, but that doesn't mean I should set the song as if it's So, but the more information I have about the person, the better, the more I can sort of, honor them. Yes.
Do you confer with, did she confer with the relatives of these people that you found out at grave level?
Deborah,
I can't hear any question.
oh, they,
Does she confer with the relatives of the people she's found, these 12 people?
did you confer with the relatives at all of any of these people that were sent?
No, I honestly really, because they were first-hand accounts, I really believe in like honoring that person's truth. And I've done the work of doing a few productions where I interviewed multiple people outside, and they all remember things very differently than that person does. So I didn't want to complicate what that person's truth was by having all this extra information of other people's accounts, and I really wanted to just figure out how to honor what the parts are that they wanted to have remembered when they sat down and did their interviews with graduate school.
Yeah. Another question, yes. Say that again? Yes, it really does. It really does. I think this art form, especially opera, I I love that this space exists within the classical music space. Being a composer of orchestral music is very lonely. You just sit in a room and you put dots on a page and then you give the score over and then they play it and then you're done. But in this process, I get to work with, amazing poets like Deborah, and then we get to work with the actual singers and, coach them on bringing our music to life. And, so it's very collaborative. And it's rooted in community. I'm connecting here with you all. You're getting a little insight into my process, a little feedback on words I should emphasize or not. So like I love this connecting thing that we're doing. And music does connect us, art does connect us. And so I'm trying to tap into that energy for sure. Are you an artist as well? So you're an artist in training? Yes, awesome, great. Any other questions before we close? Yes?
Do you start with, I guess, the size and structure of the orchestra you want, or does that develop as you write?
Yeah, because of budgetary things with the organizations who are putting the piece on, you sort of have to figure out the size of the ensemble. Sometimes you run into little snafus where that wasn't considered and then you're asked to reduce things because you wrote something too large that they didn't budget for. So, it's always a good business practice to sort of figure that out before so that people know you're writing for double winds, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a set of strings, Yes?
You mentioned some of the favorite artists that you're listening to. I'm curious about your favorite composers, either in terms of their output or in terms of their process and how that process inspires your own process you discussed earlier.
So I'm a part of a composer collective right now called the Blacknificent Seven. It's Jesse Montgomery, Carlos Simon, Jasmine Barnes, Dave Ragland, Damian Jeter, Sean O'Pebolo, and myself. And a lot of them are in Chicago. So at least we have Central Time Zone considered. But we text all the time. We were just texting this morning. Jasmine just sent guys, we're killing it this morning. Props to all of you. You know, it was just wonderful, a sense of community. Jasmine's based in Dallas, Fort Worth area. And so, you know, we're encouraging each other. It's, you know, there are not that many Black composers in the classical music space, so we're supporting each other. But in terms of composers in the canon that provide a lot of inspiration, I was just listening to Bach the other day, Augustin Hadelich playing the Andante from Sonata No. 2, and I wept. Bach, Rachmaninoff, my Instagram handle is Blackmaninoff. That's how much I'm obsessed with Rachmaninoff. Tchaikovsky, Chopin, all the mushy-gushy people, Ravel. I like Stravinsky too. I won a piano concerto competition with his Concerto for Piano and Wind. So like I can do a little neoclassical strident, hard to listen to stuff. So yeah, I listened to the Ligeti's Piano Etude, Autumn in Warsaw just yesterday and wept. It's so good. It's a tempo fugue. I'm obsessed. I'm gonna write one. Yeah, so a lot of things like that inspire me. Yes. Another question on the wall. Yeah, I feel like it's sort of essential. If I'm going to share it, I have to believe in it. One time I wrote a whole, I shouldn't say this, but a long time ago, not a long time ago, it's not a long time ago, a while ago, I wrote a whole baritone saxophone concerto. It was a consortium. I was paid the initial amount. I wrote it, I listened to it, I didn't like it, didn't believe in it, sent the money back, and refused to have the piece performed. Like, I need to believe in the piece wholeheartedly if I'm going to put it out there. And sometimes I've written pieces and I feel like I've put my whole heart into it, and I listen to it, I'm like, nah, put it away. And who knows, maybe I'll use some of that material in other pieces. Maybe there is a truth there that just wasn't the right time for that to come out. So I have to sort of try and be wise and discern what's the right moment for this piece or this music. But I'm not going to let it go if I don't believe in it. Yeah. All right, are we out of time? No? No? Great. Any other? Yes? No? Cool. Deborah. As I was going over this, were there any things that you want me to know as a composer based on what you heard me saying, or any directions you would like me to go, any parts of the poem that you want, if you were the composer, that you would want to emphasize? Enlarging?
I think you're on the right track, and I try to say as a composer when I don't want to do that. I think, you know, the part about this collaboration I like is that you're going to do something that I didn't expect or didn't think of, so I don't want to guide your hand back to the things that I didn't think of, you know?
That's awesome. That's not always the case. That's not always the case. But I think also too, I want to, you know, I've been setting text recently of poets that I don't have contact with. And sometimes I have, you know, questions like, why did they choose this word instead of this word? Or, you know, overall though, of the whole cycle perhaps, are there any things that you want me to, you know, examine or explore, especially as I'm trying to make this whole thing feel cohesive? I know I mentioned some of the elements that connect all of the poems, but is there anything that you'd like to highlight for everyone here in attendance today as well?
I think for me, I'm less of like what I want you to do, more of like what I'm interested to see how you do.
Okay.
Is I think there's some pieces that are absolutely spoken in colloquialism, right? Like they sound like your grandmama that stays down the street, you know, like.
Right.
And I wanted to tap into kind of a very everyday language for Black folks in their voice. Something depicted as direct quotes from some of the oral history sections. You know, there's a section that is I'm looking at it.
There's one, speaking of the colloquialisms, the one right before Enlarging is called My Third Ward by Dolores Smith. And the first line is, y'all don't know nothing about my third ward. And I can't wait to set that with all of the attitude and rhythm of that line.
They're talking about like calling the party line and like watching the first TV at their child's funeral home, and like, it's very much about just like, you don't know what mine used to look like because it's very much an old person telling a young person, like, this Houston is cute, but y'all know nothing about my Houston, my Birdwood, right? And so just like thinking of age and how you add variation for like generationalism, if that's a word, which it might not be.
You just made it.
In like this explaining and thinking through how do we represent multiple generations of thought and multiple experiences that live, even though everyone may have been interviewed, may all be over the age of 50 or whatever it is, which is not the case, but how do we make them sound younger or understand what it was to be young and Houston for them, right? Like those kind of things I'm interested to see how you go about representing music.
Yeah, I feel like there are, with that poem, it really does invite me to bring a lot of the musical language of Black musical idioms into the classical music space. I would not be setting "Y'all Don't Know Nothing About My Third Ward" with like the energy that I was playing a while ago. Like that would just not fit. The attitude needs to match the rhythm of the speech, the barely a phone but call the party line. Like it's such a fun poem, and I can't wait. Even in that poem though, there are, it's the structure of it too does invite connection between different stanzas, and the very last line is Houston knows how to hold on, and that sentiment, how do I build to that while starting with the line, y'all don't know nothing about my third ward, like, that's gonna be fun.
I also think that poem is like meatier, right? Like it's like a heavier text, and it's, more like consonant heavy, and again, that was intentional because I wanted it to feel denser and like, what I'm saying, unbreakable and not as legato, like I wanted you to have to struggle with that, no lies. Right? To give that kind of, pairing in the auditory part of our audience and being able to hear something that sounds so clearly different than
Yes. I feel this poem has a lot of like vertical, like angular energy more, and the enlarging that follows it is much more circular, more fluid, more, so like she's already made my job a lot easier by sustaining interest by having these varied sort of linguistic textures that will imply how I make them come alive with the music. So thank you for that. Yes?
Question for Deborah. How did she select the 12 people that she selected? And how many, what kind of a good question, how many of the videos did you have to go through to pick these people?
As I understand, we were in collaboration with the Gregory School, and there are archives there, and one of them was an interview with Jackie Bostic here, but Deborah, do you have any more information to share about how you chose these poems?
By the Gregory School. Yeah, so they gave me access to a digital archive, and they handpicked who they wanted. I think they were, at the very end of it, there may have been like 3, they were like, you need one more pick from one of these 3, but in reality, the choice wasn't really on me as much as it was the process and how did I approach those things were on me. A lot of the people were very similar. It came from teaching backgrounds or came from African backgrounds. And so it's very difficult to do that 12 times, right? So I think for me, trying to figure out like where is going to be the teacher one, and then where are we going to hear from the activist, and where does this activist or this teacher or this person in the neighborhood have something else to say that's equally as interesting about the everyday experience of Black Houston. That was trickier for me than trying to figure out who I was going to highlight.
And then there were a few that, like the first Black controller of Houston is one of them. Which poem is that again?
Controller, and then Dr. Freeman was one of them. For those of you who know, the debate, famous debate coach from TNC. So there was some that just seemed like kind of, gimmies that we knew this strategy in what we're doing. But there was kind of a clear approach for those a little bit more than people like Ruby, who I had already done something that was geared on teaching. So it was like, ooh, how do I approach her story? And so maybe it's more about generational legacy. Maybe it's more about love and just like what we want for our children. Maybe there's something there that's a little easier to tap into.
Yeah. Did everyone hear what she was sharing there? Yeah, okay, cool. I just want to make sure that you're still hearing the sound there. Any other questions? Yes?
Also a question for Deborah. As the librettist, does she anticipate that as you're developing these things, the poetry may evolve and change also in this? I don't know.
Does the poetry evolve and change as I'm setting it in this process? You want to offer
I
some
mean,
insight?
it did in our first collaboration of the first piece we did for this cycle. Joelle would call me and say, hey, I have this phrase and I'm like a syllable too long. And can you help me come up with that? It was like a gentle nudge that this line is a little too long and we need to cut it. Which he's always so gracious in how he approaches it. He's a great collaborator in that way. But I think those are kind of where I see the evolution. I've worked with other composers where they cut entire sections out. I just asked that they talk to me before they do it, like, because I kind of had some intentionality when I wrote it. But, you know, sometimes in the conversation we realize that repetition of an earlier phrase does emotionally the same thing that maybe an entire stanza does. And so there has to be some moving around or some reduction or some, those are kind of the things that happen in the process.
So one of the things I want to do to illuminate that this process a little bit for in response to that question too is that for that poem, Deborah is a wonderful spoken word performer. Like that's her bread and butter. If you have a chance to see her perform, see her perform. So she wrote a spoken word version of that in response to the oral history of Jackie Bostic. And then she also wrote a song text version for me to set. And in that process, I realized that I loved all of the energy and the unique things that made the spoken word version pop. We're sort of gone from the song text version, and maybe another composer would love that song text version. It's streamlined, it's very, she considered all the things that composers want, shorter lines, equal lines, if you look at it on the page, like, this is the spoken word version, like it looks like paragraphs, and this is the song text version. It's very streamlined. But it seemed to rob all of the color and all of Deborah's energy from the text. So I said, I'm gonna work from the spoken word line. And then I'm working in it and I'm realizing, oh wait, I need this line to change just a little bit so it can fit within the structure of the song. I wanna repeat this so that it's a little bit strophic, because one of the things that we have to consider too is that when you're reading a poem, you can go back and read that stanza one more time. In music, we don't have that luxury. We're moving in time. And so I'm wanting you to understand everything that makes Deborah's poetry so special. So if I just zip through it and then go on to the next thing, you're gonna lose that. So sometimes I wanna bring something back to sort of re-anchor, even process, look at it from a different angle after experiencing a verse, and then listen to that line one more time before we move on. So those are some of the things that I was asking Deborah in that process. Thank you all for coming. I know you have to slip out, but thank you. Yeah. Bye. Thanks for coming. So yeah, I think that will continue as we're even working on these other poems, which having worked with me on that one, she sort of knows how I respond to her language, and I already know that she made adjustments knowing that I'm going to be setting her text. I already feel that energy. I haven't even talked to her about it, but I just know that she's tailor-making these for my musicianship. So yeah, even that considered, we'll still have some dialogue back and forth about certain lines. Yes?
Of course, teacher saying, what voices are you hearing in this work? Is it, just for two parts? Is it for, are you going to try to tap into different voices?
Yes. So that is a good question.
What's the question, Joel?
What are the voice types that we're focusing on with this? So the first song was, I would say it's for high mezzo, or Yeah, mezzo with a top, or yeah, it's sort of the highest note is an A, but a lot of it sits on the staff, on the bottom half of the staff. So I feel like a soprano who's comfortable sitting there for a while can definitely do it. But Ariana Longino did the premiere, and you know she can. A lot of what I found is that a lot of black singers in the classical space are vocalists. Like it's just like it sort of goes over these traditional lines that have been, you know, decided on a different continent. So it makes sense that people of Africa, of the African diaspora, would have a different categorization, I guess, of where the voice lies. And so I don't know if I could say what specific clock is these are for, but I would say mezzo soprano-ish for one of the voices, and probably like lyric baritone for the other. You know, like you'll probably have to sing in F sharp or F or something, but it's not going to be like a tenor, I don't think. Yeah. Sorry. I think just to balance too with the mezzo as they're singing together, I don't know. Yeah.
One more question now.
Yes.
Any timeline of when this will be available?
This will be premiered in Juneteenth next year, around that time. Yeah. There will be information about that. I have to finish it by November. So that's the date I have in my head. We're gonna workshop it and fine tune it and all of that, so that it's solid for next year June. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I would come up. I don't bite. I might have coffee breath, but still come talk to me. I would love to hear any feedback you have about what I've shared, any ideas. If you want to compose one of the songs, I'm just kidding. But if you just want to come talk to me about this, and let's all thank Deborah for being here despite the flu. Oh, is she frozen? I'm sure she hears it. She might be frozen, but she hears it. And thank you, Emancipation Park Conservancy. Did you hear it? Did you hear the applause? Is she frozen again? You don't hear it? She hears it. Well, anyway, thank you all for being here, and I'll see you at the next Coffee with the Composer, I guess.